Let's get more reaction on the big breaking news this hour that Sebastian Vettel will retire from Formula One at the end of the 2022 season. Craig Slater is alongside me on set. Always sad when one of the greats of any sport says farewell. Did you expect this?
It's been a bit of a long goodbye. I think that's the honest answer with regard to Sebastian Vettel, because it's rather been downhill since he left Red Bull. He left there in 2015 to join Ferrari, to emulate his idol Michael Schumacher, to win a Ferrari World Championship, to win a World Championship with another team. It didn't happen. He came close. He made mistakes, which possibly cost him those Ferrari championships in great fights with Lewis Hamilton, particularly in 2018. Ferrari decided not to offer him another contract when his first came to an end. He joined Aston Martin, hoping it would be a fun project. The year in which he agreed to join them, they were doing well and regularly threatening the podium. It hasn't worked out there for him either, so it's been a rather dreary couple of years, or year and a half he's spent at the team. So not entirely unexpected this has happened. I spoke to Sebastian Vettel. I haven't had too many long off-camera conversations with him over the years, but I did have one at the launch of the Aston Martin car this year. And while he was upbeat, and while absolutely he has given his all this season to drive that project on, we had an interesting conversation about how many races we're in F1 nowadays, and he asked me, are you going to all the races? And I said no, and I said actually it doesn't really work well with family life, and he nodded his head. And I said to him, you know, every extra race they add above 18, if you've got a young family, it's extra tension, it takes you away from your loved ones. And in his statement today, I think he outlines the fact that maybe he needs to be Sebastian Vettel, the husband and father now for this portion of his life, rather than the absentee racing driver, which unfortunately for him, and he's a very dedicated family man, that's what his job has entailed.
Yeah, he says in that statement that you just touched on, Craig, I'll focus on what is next. It's very clear to me that being a father, I want to spend more time with my family, but today is not about saying goodbye. I just wanted to touch on one of the things you mentioned there about the competitiveness of his car, and it's something, and you know these drivers far better than I do, I've sensed it in the body language of Fernando Alonso before. These great champions, if they can't be pushing for the podium, they don't really want to be involved in it, and because they're just natural winners.
Yes, and there's a difference obviously in terms of Alonso's lifestyle away from racing. You know, he hasn't got a family like Sebastian has. And also, I think he is absolutely convinced he needs more championships than the two he has. I think he's desperate to get a third. And that number 3, I think, is significant in F1 terms historically, because when you look at the likes of Jackie Stewart and Ayrton Senna, I think that's the threshold of the great champions in many cases. Sebastian Vettel has 4, so he'll always be mentioned in that bracket. Does he absolutely rank amongst the very greatest of all time, the top 5, say? Difficult question to answer. In championship terms, yes, he does, because only Michael Schumacher and Lewis Hamilton and the great Juan Manuel Fangio have more championships than he does. I suppose people will look at his career and ask, to what extent was it that outstanding Red Bull car, which was head and shoulders better than the rest of the field in 2 of his 4 championship winning seasons at least? Against that, you have to say he won in a Toro Rosso before he joined Red Bull, which is a remarkable achievement. Only Pierre Gasly recently has been able to do in a rather fortuitous set of circumstances. He looked like a championship challenger at Ferrari, couldn't quite get those championship bids over the line. But I think in the wider sense of what he's contributed to the sport, and also in terms of his activism, I think that has elevated his status in recent years, and I think that in particular is something which will be missed by Formula One. The fact that he spoke out on so many important matters, even in Hungary this time last year, carrying the pride colours in a country that had recently passed LGBTQ+, anti-LGBTQ+ legislation in many people's minds. He's been an ardent ally of Lewis Hamilton in many of the causes he's espoused as well, and just has this wisdom and experience and has been a kind of moral compass for the sport over the last few years. So alongside his considerable on-track achievements, he will always be a figure that will be distinctive in the sport's history.
It's interesting to look at parts of the statement from both him and from Lawrence Stroll from Aston Martin as well, who says, we made it clear to him that we wanted him to continue with us next year, but in the end he has done what he feels is right for himself. And Sebastian Vettel mentions the fans, and you use that phrase right at the top, long goodbye, but now Vettel gets the second half of a season effectively to say his farewell to tracks around the world.
The other bizarre aspect to this is he's never gone on social media apart from today to announce his retirement, which is that's very Sebastian Vettel. He's a contrasting character, you know, deeply private, maybe a little bit too private. A lot of us found about like to keep his personal life very separate from his public life as a sportsman. Didn't publicise the birth of his first couple of children, which you know caused people to try and dig around into his private life to see what was happening. Yes, you're absolutely right. He was made an offer to continue at Aston Martin. He was exactly the sort of person they needed to help develop the car, the factory, and the general approach to racing. You would think they will be looking for someone similar, potentially. Maybe a Daniel Ricciardo, someone like that. Fernando Alonso, I expect to stay at Alpine, but were he on the market, maybe someone of his experience and status would be the kind of individual they might look to bring in. I suppose people will also wonder whether Mick Schumacher at Haas might be enticed there as well. Might that be a kind of stepping stone move for him potentially? But yeah, Sebastian does things his own way. He's done this at an unusual point in the season. But yes, I think it will be next year when he's not there, we really will understand just what a contribution he's made when he's no longer there.